This is the last episode of the morning meeting before Election Day, and everybody's a little tingly. Everybody's a little excited and on edge and confused. We are not, by the end of this episode, going to tell you who's going to win, but we will give you a lot of information. For me, the big moment of the day that we know about is the early vote data in Pennsylvania, which we were expecting this morning. It's been delayed till this afternoon, I'm told. Be on the lookout for that. We'll have full details at 6 o'clock on Two-Way tonight. But lots going on, and we'll, as always, run through the Daybook. We'll kick it around a little bit, and we'd love your questions. If you're here in the Two-Way platform and wish to participate, please raise your electronic hand. As always, we'd love the new people. We got so many new people now, we don't know what to do with you all. We're running out of space. That's true on YouTube as well. Glad to have you there, whether you're on YouTube or here on Two-Way. This is not an ordinary platform. The chat, I don't read the chat, except occasionally. But I've been told reliably it's become the absolute sewer we don't want it to be. So please, if you want to participate in the chat, peace, love, and understanding, the presumption of grace, don't run counter to the ethos of what we're doing here by turning the chat into a normal social media thing where you just criticize people and use profanity and whatever. So don't do that. I'm not sure. Part of me wants to shut down the chat, but we'll keep it open. But please, use the chat to engage in rigorous discussion. Dan ran in the marathon this weekend. Dan, tell everybody your time. Put up the picture, please. How'd you do, Dan?
I did great. My goal was to run it in 3 hours and 30 minutes, and I did 3 hours and 28 minutes. And I was able to get out of bed today, so 2 for 2. It was an awesome experience. And thank you all for supportive comments and good cheer.
All right. Brian Lee is going to join us at the end of the program to give an incredible update on what's going on in the farm. And the weekend was filled with developments. You'll be shocked and amazed if you haven't already heard about what's happening. Spoiler alert, there's a new website. So we'll get to that. And Sean is tweeting during the program, so he's not really paying much attention to what's going on.
I'm multitasking, and I heard everything you said about Brian Lee and race and something or other, and whatever.
What did I say about how disastrous Donald Trump's event in Lancaster was yesterday?
You didn't.
Nothing yet. Nothing yet, but I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get that momentarily. All right, the vice president. She's all about Pennsylvania today. She wakes up in Detroit, once again, coasting through the tape, doesn't leave Detroit till noon. Not sure what she's doing all morning, but Scranton event at 2:35 p.m. So her first event, 2:35 p.m. Scranton. Then Allentown at 4:10, then Pittsburgh at 7:30, then 10:20 Philadelphia. And then she flies back to Washington, D.C. to Andrews. The Philadelphia event includes Lady Gaga and Oprah. The Pittsburgh event includes some of my favorites, Andra Day, DJ Ari Cole, D Nice, and Katy Perry. So that's what she's doing, all about Pennsylvania. Donald Trump is spreading out a little bit. Raleigh at 10 a.m., Reading, Pennsylvania at 2 p.m., Pittsburgh at 6 p.m., and then his tradition to always end in Grand Rapids at 10:30. I predict that won't start at 10:30, just FYI. The running mates are also, of course, in battleground states. Tim Walz wakes up at home in Minnesota, does a little work there to make sure they don't lose that state. Campaigns then in Wisconsin, La Crosse, Stevens Point, Milwaukee, ends in Detroit with his wife, and his Colbert interview that he taped last week airs tonight. J.D. Vance, one of the harder working men in show business, has a bunch of events. Wisconsin, La Crosse at 10:30 Eastern, then Flint, Michigan at 1:15 Eastern, Atlanta, 5 Eastern, Newtown Square with Byron Donalds at 6 Eastern, and then Newtown, Pennsylvania at 8:30 Eastern. So lots of events for J.D. Vance. All right. First thing I want to talk about, guys, is the info wars. Okay, info flow, rather. One of the most experienced presidential political operatives in modern American history said to me in the last week of the campaign, you want to win the information flow. And I would say, I'm not predicting Donald Trump will lose. I'm not cheering for Donald Trump will lose. But I would say from Madison Square Garden until yesterday, he has lost the info flow, both because the Harris campaign is having optimistic, loud, vibrant events. The press is on their side, and that helps. But Donald Trump's yesterday in Lancaster that I went to was one of the worst events I've ever seen him hold. He was tired, hoarse. He talked about election denialism. He made a joke about the press being shot. He barely talked about the issues that where he's ahead. This was not the weave. This was the wander. And he got better during his subsequent events. But I would say he and his team have spent the week insulting Hispanics, blacks, women, and being pessimistic and dark and calling Kamala Harris a moron. So, Sean, whether you think it'll cost him the race or not, and I think it might, if it's close, assuming it's close, I think this could cost him the race. Do you agree that he has lost the information flow in the last week? And if not, explain the counter argument.
No, I think that when you look at who's voting, who's left to get, I don't think so. I mean, I think he's stayed in the mix. It's the same Donald Trump. I mean, if you don't like him, you don't like him. If you do, you love him. I don't think that many people. I mean, the rallies don't have the same shtick at this point if you're not there, right? I mean, Madison Square Garden, I think, was huge. It got a lot of people fired up. The early vote numbers show it. The data is still what is king, and we'll see what it says this afternoon in Pennsylvania. But so far, so good when it comes to actually getting the early vote out.
I agree with that, but just I'm going to ask you again. Do you think? I don't know if you watched the Lancaster rally.
No, I did, and but that's why I'm.
It was horrible.
Answering
it was dark, conspiratorial, negative, meandering. It was everything that Republicans said for 3 years. This guy can't win. It was horrible. So, and I think the Harris events have been great. They've been high energy and enthusiastic, and she's not specific, but she's staying out of the way. Dan, what do you think of this information flow battle?
Absolutely. I mean, look, Democrats have kind of turned the tide. I mean, whether she ends up winning or not, 2 weeks ago, the circular firing squad was, in full effect. You had stories about she was, performing poorly with blacks, with Latinos. And then the early vote started, and their stories were that she was underperforming. As the week went on last week, Democratic optimism, and look, we've talked about how David Plouffe goes on and says what he says. And, if you really look at it, you could question, what is he really saying and how does he really know this? But they created this sense of momentum that Trump had stalled, that she was back in the race, that she was on a front foot. And then you add that her rallies have been loud and boisterous, and add the fact that the media is helping her to be charitable. And as we go into Monday, there is the most optimism that I have seen from Democrats, except for maybe the only thing that matches it is like 2 weeks after her launch, when they were just, giddy and euphoric at the fundraising and the huge crowds.
Right. Yep.
Like, there is a sense from very sober Democrats that she may actually pull this off. And 2 weeks ago, it was Autopsyville.
Correct. So we're going to get to the data, Sean, in a minute, because I think the early data remains a huge problem for them. But let me play John McLaughlin and show you a few elements that speak to my thesis that she's been doing substantially better in the information flow here in the last week. All right. Item, Nikki Haley's op-ed piece, 104. So Nikki Haley apparently is never going to campaign either with Donald Trump or in a battleground state on her own as a surrogate. She wrote an op-ed in the Journal. The first 3 words are always what you want when you get a big endorsement op-ed. Trump isn't perfect, okay? I hear mixed things about why she's never going to have campaigned with Trump. I think her not doing it is a press obsession, but I think it does speak to the ambivalence of a lot of Haley Republicans, of which she is one, about Donald Trump. So that's number 1. Number 2, 105, biased press coverage or accurate reflection. This is the New York Times story about the Trump rally that I keep referring to. It was actually in Lidditz, Pennsylvania, which is like in the Lancaster Metroplex. That is an accurate headline, okay? This is not a New York Times biased headline. In fact, the headline understates how horrible this event was. So again, that's what the headlines are like today, and they've been negative, and sometimes they're biased negative. Issue 3, item 3 rather. Item, the celebrities, again, totally subjective. I'm not in a Green Bay diner, but I think they're making the celebrities work for them. I think they're getting a lot of boisterous coverage. And the latest celebrity entrance into the Harris for President sweepstakes, there's a Will.i.am video we're not going to show because I didn't think it was particularly good. But check out 106.
This election is going to be one of the closest in history. Your vote will make the difference. That means you, Gary. Oh, blah, 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 I'm just one person. No, shut the up, Gary. Last time, only a few thousand votes kept Trump out of office. And this time, we will hold you personally responsible, Gary. Don't forget to vote, Gary.
John, I'm gonna keep hammering this one more time. You and I agree on Madison Square Garden. The comic was ridiculous, but the event was actually quite good, and the press doesn't get it. But name a good moment Trump has had since Monday. Go ahead.
I don't think anything has stood out, but I also don't think it's bad. I mean, that's the difference. I go back to 2016. I don't think we had some kind of huge, great moment the last.
Well, you did. You did. James Comey asked for Anthony Weiner's laptop. That was good. And his events were good. I covered a lot of the events in the last week. They were good. They were memorably good. They were high energy. Now, I will say that
so can I juxtapose that for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
I would just say this. I think that our early vote, like, you got to look, would I like everything to be good? Yes. So just to be clear, I don't think the events are, but they're also not, nothing is going the completely different than it did in 2016, but the results, the data, the number of people who are voting and voting.
We're going to get to that. We're going to get to
no, but you're asking.
No, Sean, I'm asking you a very specific thing. I can tell you 10 good moments Harris has had this week. I can't tell you a good moment Trump has had. I'm not saying
but
he's
it's like
lose
asking,
over it.
Mark, you're asking, like, was the air game good of a team, but they scored more points? At the end of the day, did you win or lose? And right now, if you're telling me that, hey, we're doing better on the ground, more people are voting, but some of the events aren't great, I'll take the points on the board.
Okay. So points on the board. Early vote right now. Here's my macro sense of it.
Can I make one point on the Nikki Haley thing, though?
Yeah,
look, I don't know why you think that's a bad thing. Do I think it's going to be, to me, I'm hearing, by the way, both, I don't know if you and I are hearing the same things, but there's a lot behind this. It's interesting in terms of why she's doing it, why he's not campaigning, which we could go down that rabbit hole. But I don't think people who are undecided are going to look at a Wall Street Journal op-ed 24 hours out and say, oh, you know what? Finally, there you go. That being said,
I don't, but I think if she campaigned with him in the Philadelphia suburbs tonight, it would be good for him.
Fair enough. Okay, but my point is, I don't think that the thing is a net benefit. Her saying it's sort of the Larry Hogan thing in Maryland, which is, hey, look, he's not great, but he's better than her. She says right in the first paragraph, there's nothing I agree with on her.
But can I just add that I talked to somebody at the National Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee on Saturday, and they said that in their data, they are seeing some small erosion for Trump with Haley voters. I mean, I don't.
Correct.
And it's my understanding they've told the Trump people that, and the fact that op-ed appeared on Monday tells me where there's smoke, there might be a little bit of fire. And if you have a 1-point lead, it could become a 1-point deficit.
Correct. I'm not saying the op-ed is a disaster. I'm saying the op-ed speaks to the absence of her on the trail, which if you had said after she spoke at the convention, she would never be a surrogate and she would never campaign with Trump, that'd be surprising. And that's what's happened. All right.
Well, and also, if you're putting out tweets that I'll be great for women still, why wouldn't you use your best women or woman asset?
Well, to be fair, yesterday at this horrible event, he was introduced by, amongst others, Tulsi Gabbard, Danica Patrick. I'm missing two. Lots of women introduced him, but he's the candidate. All right. Early vote. My sense of the early vote is it is not as disastrous as it was in the first 3 days for the Democrats, but it's still really bad. And the Harris campaign has done a great job of spinning the national media on it. And when you talk to people in the states, whether there's two categories of people in the states. There's more junior people who don't lie about the data and what it means. What you have now is tons of senior Democrats are in the states. They're door knocking, like people who've run presidential campaigns are literally going to Michigan and Pennsylvania and door knocking. And those people are honest with me because they're worried, and they're not in the business of like Wilmington is. They're really worried. Okay, they may be wrong. They may be wrongly worried. The Pennsylvania numbers, when they come out today, if she's below 400,000 vote lead compared to Biden's lead in 2020, it's going to be problematic for her. What is the biggest indication that we've seen that the early vote is a problem for her? It's Jim Messina talking to Jen Psaki. Jim Messina, if you go watch his cable TV appearances, he has been, first for Biden and then for Harris, the most boosterish person about them. Just rose-colored. Everything that's going on with Biden and Harris is fantastic. Here he is with Jen Psaki talking about the early vote. Please play 103.
Okay, what's their biggest concern right now if you're the Harris team?
Well, look, I think it's a couple things. The early vote numbers are a little scary, and you and I have been texting back and forth. Republicans didn't do what they did last time. Last time Trump said don't early vote, and so they didn't. Republicans do have an advantage in early vote numbers. When the early vote come in, it's going to look a little bit different than 2020, and that's scary. Scary.
So Dan, decode that for people who aren't familiar with Jim Messina. How scary is it that Jim Messina says it's scary?
It's scary. I mean, it's brutal honesty. And you look at every major urban center in the swing states, and there is not one, not Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Detroit, Atlanta, Las Vegas, Phoenix, where Democrats are doing well. And the problem is it's two voting blocks. It's Blacks, Latinos, people of color, and young voters. They're not seeing the turnout yet that they feel that they're going to need. So the issue is, can you make it up in the suburbs or with older voters, as you talked about with Ann the other day? But something's got to give. Otherwise, it's hard to see, where the numbers are going to come from.
Sean, what you respond, I just want you to incorporate one other question in your answer, not as a partisan, but as a practitioner. Is it possible that the turnout operation of the Harris campaign, which has failed to some extent in the early, will be better on same day, on election day voting tomorrow?
So the thing that I want people to understand is that what Republicans did was change a pattern. For example, me, I'm an election day voter. I was like, you know what? If I'm going to preach it, I got to go do it. So I went and voted early and urged everyone to do it and got them to do it, right? Democrats are early voters by nature and by practice, right? So the question is, if they're not doing it now, why? Right? I mean, in theory, you're right. They could still show up tomorrow in droves, but that defies, it's the opposite, right? It's sort of, it doesn't make sense. Now, so it's possible, but it's, again, this goes back to why Republicans changed our behavior, because we were told, hey, bank that vote. It saves us money. It's, we don't have to worry about existential threats to that, weather or, childcare issues, what have you, that could potentially keep you from voting. You have to question why Democrats aren't doing it unless they aren't voting. And that's the big question. Like, do they just want to wait for one more commercial? Maybe, but that does not portend well for her. And so I think obviously, there's always the possibility, but it is not a good sign for the other side. And look, I think the cool part is when you look at some of the statistics, Allegheny County is one that comes to mind in Pennsylvania, Western PA. 87% of people there tend to vote early, Republicans. And when you look at how well we're doing there, only right now about 9% are election day voters, meaning you still got a lot that can show up on election day as well. So that's a very positive sign for Team Trump. They got a lot of people who tend to show up, but they still got a lot of people who are either low propensity or first-time voters to come.
Mark, can I just add the one piece of, because again, Democrats are very worried about Blacks and young voters not
and Hispanic.
And Hispanic, absolutely. Well, and just her performance with Hispanics in general.
Correct.
The Harris campaign believes they are not seeing the bro vote so far in early vote. Doesn't mean they won't turn out on election day, but there is some comfort that at least while Democrats are underperforming with that group that might be the key, they don't quite see a surge yet.
And we're seeing, I mean, that's universal, right? So you got a lot of young college kids that are all fired up for Trump, but haven't shown up, at least in the data. One last thing, I just from the audience standpoint, because we've been asked this before on the Messina comments. Look, when you're a guy like Messina, I think, Mark, you framed this well. Like, he's got a lot of credibility at stake. And so he does not want to go overboard and be exuberant for Kamala. If he knows this was a warning signal to them saying, hey, I'm still with you, but. And that's the thing that people have to understand is that there are people on both sides that are still for their person, but they've got to be careful because they don't want their credibility to be damaged, saying there's no question she's going to win. So I take that Messina warning very seriously.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know exactly why he did it, but I think the fact that he did it says things are a problem. All right.
Well, and by the way, Mark, the fact that he dropped that Jen Psaki and probably the whole, 2012 senior leadership is on a text chain, and we've all been talking about this, right? Yeah. That was another ooh.
Yeah. And I won't show the Axelrod clip. Axelrod was not quite as negative as Messina, but but he was pretty negative too, and leaning into the traditional role of David Axelrod, which is to trash any Democratic presidential campaign he's not working on. All right. Mandatory prediction. Sean, will Kamala Harris win any of North Carolina, Georgia, or Arizona? Yes or no?
If I have to take them all, I've been
Will she win any of them? You don't need to say which one.
No. But North Carolina's the only one that gives me pause. But if I have to group them together, I'll say no.
Dan, will she win any of those three? No?
No, Charlie Brown with the football.
Yeah. So if she doesn't win any of those three, just again to clarify for those people who are not have an abacus in front of it, she's got to win. She has to go. Oh, she has to win all three of Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan,
and hold New Hampshire, and hold Nevada.
Yes, and hold and well, no, not she doesn't need to win.
Not
Nevada.
If she wins Iowa, Sean.
No, she doesn't need to win. She doesn't need to win Nevada. If she can lose Nevada, if she wins all three.
If she wins all three and doesn't do that, then she's at 270, right?
Yeah,
correct.
Right on the button.
Yeah.
Right, but then if you flip Nevada, oh, you're right.
Yeah. So that's why I don't really think about Nevada anymore, or Nevada, depending on how people like to say it, because it doesn't matter. She's going to have to. The only reason it matters is if she loses a Sun Belt, a Rust Belt state and needs to replace it. And if she loses a Rust Belt state and needs to replace it, she's got to also win one of the other bigger states. Got to win Georgia or North Carolina. And if she's not going to win any of those three, plus Arizona, that doesn't matter. All right.
By the way, can I just one obligatory point here, because I'm watching Justin in the chat say this. I will tell you, I don't think I've done a lot of research because I've been asked about this over and over again. The Nebraska thing is fascinating. There's going to be a lot of recriminations about if this comes down to 270, 268. One, I think the role of Nebraska is going to be huge. And two, I think the question that you brought up, Mark, and I think we better pull that tape and put a pin in it, about faithless electors is going to be massive.
Who's the first person who raised that, to your knowledge, Sean?
That's why I just said Mark Halperin, put a pin in it.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I can't believe people aren't talking about it more. It's kind of nutty to me.
They are now.
Yeah. Okay. Mandatory prediction. What is the number of Republican Senate-held seats they'll have after this election? Dan.
Boy, I've changed over the weekend about this. They'll win Montana, Ohio. I'm going to say one of the three: Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. The one I'm watching now is Nevada. I think
how many,
Trump's
Dan?
in Nevada, and I
Dan,
think
give me a number.
That would be 4. The math major here, is that right? Yeah. So they'd be at 53. West
53.
Virginia.
Okay.
Montana,
Dan says 53.
No, that's 5. That's 5. It's 5.
So 54.
I'm saying that the 3 plus one of the 3 Midwestern and Nevada.
Okay, so that's 54, right? 54. Sean.
I thought he was going to come out at 53, so I was going to go 54. I'll go 50. It's interesting that he put Nevada ahead of the other ones, but I'll go 54 too, but for different reasons.
Yeah. I say 53 if Harris wins, 55 or 56 if Trump wins.
By the way, interesting Trafalgar poll today. I know it's not much, shows Hovde up in Wisconsin and Trump down. Wisconsin's very tough to poll, but I just thought it was fascinating because I always thought that Hovde had to, he needed Trump to win by a point to get over the hump.
Right. So it's very rare. Susan Collins is the exception for anyone to win a Senate seat if their presidential candidate doesn't win the state. I think that may go out the window because if the presidentials are really so close, it doesn't really, it's not decisive. All right. Last mandatory prediction. And then we're going to your questions. If you'd like to get in the conversation and you're here in the two-way platform and you believe in peace, love, and understanding, please raise your electronic hand and we'll get to you in a moment. Dan or Sean first. Who has the House majority, R or D, after this election?
Republicans.
Dan.
I totally agree.
Republicans. All right. Let's go to your questions. I'm not.
Hey, but by the way, Mark, it's something that hasn't gotten a lot of press. But the fact that a year ago, Democrats thought California, New York, those suburb seats, like presidential year, we're going to blow it out of the water, we're going to flip the House, and they are ending with the fact that Trump is really strong in these blue state, suburban, upstate areas.
Yep,
and it may not happen is like part of the broader story of what's happened this year.
Fantastic point. I agree. All right, Drew, welcome in. I see you're for Harris, so you don't need to tell us that. But tell us where you are.
I am.
Tell us where you are and what's on your mind.
No, I'm.
And who did your backsplash?
My backsplash.
Your kitchen.
Yeah.
No. It's a. You'll have to ask whoever owns this building.
Airbnb, an Airbnb. Where we are? Are you saying you're in Holland? Is that what you just said?
I'm currently sitting in Copenhagen, Denmark. I'm
Denmark.
a newly minted Danish citizen as of, I believe it was Meghan McCain's birthday last week. So congratulations also to Dan for the 328. I'm a 316er, so you got some work to do. But I did want to know what shoe did you wear? And then the question I have for everybody here, specifically Dan and Sean, if your party loses, what do you see as sort of the main scenario? And then what's the sort of subsequent, what would you call it, autopsy by each of the parties coming out of that? But
Drew,
we'll start
just
with the shoe, Dan.
Before we do Dan's shoe, are you a Harris voter or just a Harris supporter?
I am voting for Harris, and I am voting in Washington State. I used to be registered in Ohio, went to Washington for college, and then 13 years ago left the U.S. and never coming back. So I just like to be a part of this madness every 4 years.
Okay, do you pay any U.S. taxes?
I actually go into wage negotiations and say, do not go above the foreign exclusion limit.
All right, Drew, I want to write a biography of you, but we'll get to that. Dan, let's do shoes, please, and maybe any other thing you wore that was integral to your getting close to Drew's time. Not really, but good.
Nike Invisible 3s. I have wide feet, so I like my 12th pair. Yeah, I won't talk about the rest of my outfit. Our kids are horrified at my attire. If Harris loses, I think, Mark talked a little bit about this. I do agree with him. The first reaction will be it was Biden's fault that he didn't get out sooner. There wasn't a primary. I think there'll be maybe some criticism of Harris's caution. And then I think the third part, which is probably the most important, but maybe doesn't happen for a while, is the unwillingness to respect and understand Trump's appeal. Just so many Democrats think it's racism and dog whistles, and just why is the working class so attracted to Donald Trump?
Yeah.
I wear a mix between, I will tell you, both of you, kudos. I ran my last marathon 25 years ago when I was much younger, and you guys still beat my time by about half. So I told Dan earlier that if you asked my time, I say, I just finished. That's all that matters. So to both of you on the timing. I think what's actually fascinating about your question is that for the most part, sometimes, and I'll get to our side, but I think that neither side will actually look at the real problems. It's always this, you're going to get on the Harris side that she wasn't progressive enough. She didn't go far enough AOC Bernie. And then to Dan's point, which I think is really fat, I'm more on that time, which is that they forgot who sort of some of the people that were gettable was. On our side, I think you're going to have two factions. I think you're going to get it was all Trump. It was, if it wasn't for him, he wouldn't have done this. And then I think you're going to get a lot of people who say that that the establishment didn't pull their weight, right? Everyone traditionally, everyone on the right has to suck it up and vote for whomever the candidate is that we don't think is conservative enough, and the establishment, quote unquote, let us down this time. So I think you're going to have an internal fight. Generally, the party out of power, if you go back and think about it, right? Occupy Wall Street, Tea Party Express, even going back to Clinton with the DLC, there's always this internal, I call it a family fight of, which side needs to get it more right. And we'll go through that process. And I don't think it'll be pretty, but I think it has to happen.
One follow. Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's going to happen to Harris even if she wins, because she never took sides. And both sides are, the moment before she gets in, and particularly over personnel, are going to start arm wrestling about which camp are you in. And she doesn't like to make decisions. So
the thing that a lot of your responses sort of like indicate is, and Dan, Sean, you say this a lot in these calls, like everything's perception. And a lot of these things I can see as perception. If you had to choose like one fundamental for each party in each one of these scenarios, the loss, the autopsy, change one fundamental, what do you see as the most critical fundamental that needs to be changed?
I mean, look, I go back to the working class. like over the last 4 years, in 2020, you saw the signs that Latinos were leaving the Democratic Party for Trump. Now I think it's going to be historic. And now you're seeing Blacks without college degrees leaving the Democratic. I mean, how many more trends do you need to see before you say you're losing the working class? And there's more working class than not.
So, Drew, I think part of the answer is it depends on what the loss is. If we end up, and I don't think this will happen, but based on this discussion about the Iowa poll, if she were to win by like 310 electoral votes, it becomes like a 2022 and we get killed, I think that we have a huge women issue. And that's going to be the major talking point. If this is a squeaker in a couple states, as it's been the last 2 cycles, I will go back to what I say all the time, mechanics matter. And I would say that looking at the ground game, how it was handled, the accountability of folks, the mechanisms by which and the logistics by which we got that going, I think will become, at least for a lot of us, the focus of this. Who was responsible for executing? Where was the accountability? So how it ends up, which I don't think, just to be clear, that there's a path for Harris to win big, right? I'm just don't think that's possible. If that were the case, though, then I think it becomes a much more bigger. We have a bigger problem with women than we knew. We didn't get the men out to vote that we said we would, blah, blah, blah. If it's a squeaker, it's really a mechanics issue.
Sean, how does everyone else from Rhode Island pronounce the word squeaker?
Squeaker.
Yeah. Dan, Drew, how'd you find out about? Yeah, go ahead, Drew.
I was going to say one thing I did want to mention, Sean. I am from my father's mother's side a descendant of Roger Williams, so we have that in common, I guess. Origin stories from there, but found out about two-way. I think there aren't many people that say this. I'm sort of in the minority to where it's a sort of random YouTube feed, and just kind of it's a nice place to go to have these civil conversations, which a lot of people have said on this platform.
Yeah, are your neighbors watching too?
My next door neighbors are Brazilian and Polish, and then the other 3 are Danes. Everybody is very enraptured by the coming election, but we see it more from the side of like, what are we going to do with respect to NATO and Ukraine? That's the way that we look at it. I think the main thing, we don't see it as a huge issue, but we would have liked had a NATO issue become something quite clear for us. We would have liked like 10 years of a heads up to get our defense industries up and running. That would have been nice.
Right. Drew, thanks for joining. Come back regularly. Any descendant of Roger Williams is a descendant of ours or something like that. Thank you. All right. Elena, welcome in. Anyone associated with the farm is our hero.
Hi. I have one thing to say to Sean. I am living in Rhode Island. I'm not from Rhode Island, but I've been here for like 25 years. So
I guess then you're not native.
Right.
You know how that goes.
I don't know how you became this Republican operative, because when I got here, the Republican Party is none. Okay, so but I did get here because I was very friendly with the person who was working for Senator Chafee, his father, Senator Chafee. During
my first job in D.C.
was for Senator Chafee. That's how you did it. Anyway, I'm going to tell you, in North Providence, all right, North Providence, not near the water, all right, huge flags, not even lawn signs. I mean, like flags out people's houses for Trump. I was really shocked. So, and I've heard you say you think that Rhode Island, is going to have a big Trump turnout. And I think I might agree with you. I'm actually going to be voting for Trump. I was actually on about a month ago or 6 weeks ago, and I wasn't sure, but I feel bad that this
what caused you to decide to vote for Trump?
You want to know? There's a guy that has a podcast that's on YouTube, and he's from Australia, and he was talking to this gentleman from Britain, and the two of them are talking. It just kind of came up on my feed. Every single thing that I'm concerned about, they were talking about, and I haven't really heard so much of it. Like what's going on, and who's the president, who's making the decisions in America? Because it certainly can't be Biden. And they were also saying that they're glad that Bibi isn't listening to Biden because they wouldn't be having as much success getting the bad guys. as if they were listening to him, and that they just, it was just very, very interesting because they were looking at the American public and saying, why aren't you holding these Democrats? Aren't you concerned you don't have an acting president? And that is a huge concern for me, but everybody's so caught up in, I don't know, arguing with each other, I guess. But
remind us, have you voted for Trump previously?
I was honestly a never Trumper. I never, ever thought I was going to do it. That's not the only reason. I was with No Labels, and the Democratic operatives and a lot of Democratic, previous senators and congressmen did a lot to prevent anybody from accepting the nomination. And I worked for Senator Jeffords, which, but I haven't seen that really ugly side of politics before. I'm sure the Republicans must do it too, but I was caught up in all this Democratic, and the stuff that they're also doing, that the Democrats are doing with, hiding this for like 2 years, 3 years, and nobody seems to have ever seen, I find that irrepressible. I mean, I know Trump is, just can't control his emotions, but what the Democrats are doing across the board, I mean, there must be some group of Democrats who I'm not going to name right now, who are in the room. I don't know if they're smoking cigars or what they're doing, but they're making these decisions that, we're not going to have Biden primaried, and then we're going to do this to prevent anybody from primarying, and then we all know that there's a little, but he'll make it through the election, whatever they had been deciding.
And don't forget, they tried to keep Trump off the ballot too.
No, I mean, it's just like I'm sitting here doing. I would prefer to know who's running the country, and I feel bad for Harris because, I don't know that she's going to be the last person in the room. I think we're going to be running our country by committee.
Yeah.
And
Elena, it's so interesting to hear you say all that. Is there anything you want to ask Sean and Dan?
Dan, congratulations. And I must say, you are, I really adore you. I don't know if you can be a co-host when, what's his name? I forgot his name already. Your other co-host that you came in. Tim, right. Cause you're great. And Sean, I can't tell you, like, I think what you have done in your career after leaving Trump is probably the best anybody who worked for Trump has been able to do, including your stint on Dancing with the Stars.
Thank you.
All
Appreciate
right. Elena,
it. By the way, was
Elena,
it called Rattlesnake TV?
Rattlesnake TV?
Someone in the chat is saying, I'm guessing the show on YouTube that you were watching was Rattlesnake TV.
I doubt it because they were pretty,
All right. Well, Allie was trying to message, so I just
Elena. Yeah. All right. It's not Rattlesnake TV. It's just not necessarily. I think that's clear.
And I know
Elena,
Brian was having a little hard time getting on today, so I think he will be on.
All right. He better be on. All right, Elena. Thank you.
No, but I could talk to some of the stuff because I've been on the phone with him for hours at this point. Yeah. I missed the meeting.
Yeah, the meeting was good. Well, you'll get an update on the meeting at the end of this.
All right.
Thank you. I like Zooms that update on Zooms. All right. Here's a man from North Carolina who won't reveal who he's voting for because he hosts a show on PBS. He also happens to be the former mayor of Charlotte, North Carolina, and the former governor of North Carolina. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce to you the one and only Pat McCrory. Governor, welcome in. My prediction, even though I don't know a damn thing about North Carolina, that the people in the western part of the state whose lives were so upended by the storms would vote in great numbers because they would be given such TLC and make it easier for them to vote, seems to be true from what I read. What do you know about that, and what else is on your mind, sir?
Well, I just returned there from yesterday. I have a lake place there that a lot of places were wrecked pretty bad, but the voter turnout's amazing out west. Wow. And but the question is where the vote's coming from. Asheville, as you know, is all blue. The rural areas are all red. And that's going to be the balance. And Boone also is all blue. And you've got Appalachian State University up there. And that can make the difference. I know in my race, Appalachian State University absolutely killed me. And I lost by 10,000 votes out of 4.6 million. So I see this in North Carolina very similar to 216, where we're going to have split tickets. We're going to have, I think Trump will probably win, but it could be extremely close. And then the governor's race is over regarding the Democrats will win in the council state, I think you're going to have a pretty large percentage of people vote one way at the top of the ticket, another way further on down the ballot, very similar to what happened to me. That's my prediction. Who knows? I just don't know. Sean, go ahead, Sean. I got a question for you.
What I've, and I'm doing this just off the top of my head, so my numbers may be off a second. 2016, I think Jill Stein got about 124,000 votes. Trump won the state by 170,000 votes, which was just over 3%. In 2020, the Green Party candidate, not her, got 12,700 votes. Trump won by 1.34%, meaning I think that at least that is a very bare analysis to show the Green Party did something. Stein is on the ballot there in North Carolina. Is she like viable there? What's the vibe?
I would be more worried about the Independent and Constitutional Party, which is also on the ballot. They get a lot of votes. In 16, almost 200,000 people voted independent, and that could have swung the election either way. So I don't hear from Stein. We've seen nothing. So okay. I don't know, but that could be the voters who are disappointed each one. In fact, one question I have for you, for Dan, this was my question. Is this the same percentage of voters that don't want either candidate that we had when No Labels started? I was very active and co-chair of that with Joe Lieberman and Ben Chavis. At that time, 65% of the people didn't want either candidate. Are we at the same percentage point with Kamala in the race? And Sean, I guess a question for you would be, is Trump, if he loses, going to regret not trying to rebuild relationships with people he used to work with, including Mike Pence? I was with Mike, the vice president, about a month and a half ago, met with him for 2 hours, just him and me in Charlotte here, because we got elected governor the same year in 12. They had not talked for over 3 years. They've had no discussion whatsoever. And you just wondered if there was some outreach to some of these people to, get some of the feelings hurt out of the way. Could that have made the difference, including with some Republicans right here in this state who really haven't been reached out to at all by the campaign? If that can mean a difference of 10,000 votes, why didn't they do it? So that's my question for you. Could that have made a difference in a lot of these states to reach out to some of the old Trump people? And Dan, the vice president, has she made a difference since No Labels got in because of Biden, basically? And are we in any different situation? And Mark, I'd probably ask you the same question. Do we still have such a large percentage of people who are just dissatisfied with both picks? I don't know that answer. I've not seen surveys since the No Labels effort did not succeed. I'm just curious.
Well, that's lots of questions. I'll just address the last one and then you guys take over. If you looked on this platform, you'd certainly say that there's a lot of what we used to call double haters. I think her failure to clear the bar on substance and explicitness and clarity and differentiation from President Biden for a lot of people, I think I'd love to see more polling on it, but the qualitative is pretty clear. And just we know tens of millions are unhappy with President Trump, including people who will vote for him. But there are obviously lots of people now. I think it's lower unhappiness with the choices when it was Biden Trump for all the obvious reasons, but I still think it's pretty high. And I think if she loses, it will be because she didn't make herself an acceptable alternative for those people. Dan, pick up on any of the points the governor is.
It works on two different parts of the party. I mean, I think if she loses, they'll say young voters never got excited for her. The anti-Trump stuff was just not enough. And I think, to your point, the number of, let's say, like Haley voters or, kind of moderate, the Bill Clinton Ds, the George W. Bush Republicans who don't like him just never got comfortable with her. And so whether it was her kind of unwillingness to define an agenda, her, willingness to repudiate certain issues, but not others. I think it's pretty clear there that a lot of her vote is going to come from holding their nose and saying, I just dislike Trump more than I dislike her.
Yeah, Governor, let me take the question as to Dan first and then away. I think that, at least from my perspective, Democrats that I know, more on the professional side because of the circles I run in, I think they weren't ever excited about Biden, right? But I will say that she has definitely gotten a lot of women and a lot of base Democrats a lot more excited than Biden ever did. So at the very least, the number of double haters went down. And I think on their side, because I think she offered them an alternative. So I would say she made, I mean, for all the reasons that Mark said and Dan, I think there's still a good chunk of those people, but it's less because she's not Biden. And Biden was more of a, from the Democrats that you talked to, it was a competence issue, right? They were like, he's just too old. Kamala took that off the table. On our side, look, you know this as well as anybody. I mean, politics is all about addition. And so if whether we talked a little bit about Nikki Haley earlier, I mean, sometimes you have to suck it up and say, hey, Bob, Susie, whatever, I know we haven't gotten along. I'd really like your support. I know traditionally a Republican, and you know, I just, knowing Trump, I mean, that's just not his style. It's not his MO. We'll know more probably Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday night, or whatever it is, when we'll go, gosh, 4,000 people in North Carolina. It would have been awesome if you know, Governor McCrory was out there singing from the rooftops despite his contract issues. But I mean, I think that, like, yes is the answer. If it's a close election, you're going to look and say, you know, wow, how could Nikki Haley have helped? How could Mike Pence have helped with evangelicals? But it's just not Trump.
Yeah, the only one he did it with was Brian Kemp, and that was Desperate Times, Desperate Matters in August. I actually think he had such good leads all spring and all summer that they just thought, like, we're not the beggar anymore. Like, we're going to win this, and so we don't need to do it. And then when she surged, he had a little panic in Georgia, but then it resettled, and they're like, we're going to win this. Like, you beg me, I don't beg you.
Right. Well, yeah.
Governor, go ahead, Tom.
I would just say, you know, was it Tim Scott was addressing this on one of the Sunday shows yesterday and said, you know, I reached out to the Trump campaign. I offered to help them. And I think that that's the way that the Trump personally views it. You want to help me, you call me and say this. And I think there are some people who, right or wrong, expect a phone call from him.
Governor, how optimistic are your Democratic friends in North Carolina about Harris winning?
I'd say they probably think they're going to lose, but they also think there's a possibility. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. They think there's a possibility, which is quite remarkable compared to a month ago, I think.
I think Mike should have me on.
Yeah. All right. Hold on one second. Governor, thanks for coming on. We'd love to have you back always. Thank you. All right, guys, I brought you in together because you might be kind of a mixed set here. Thomas Fink, liberal against Kamala. Are you voting for Trump, Thomas, or?
No, I'm actually not. So let me explain.
Hold on. Just want to, in what state are you located in?
New York.
New York. All right. And Brian, you said Nikki Haley. Are you voting for Trump?
I am not. I'll probably be voting independent or libertarian.
Yeah. Where do you live?
South Dakota, after living in Washington State my whole life.
All right. So neither of you is voting for a major party candidate. Is that correct?
Nope.
Correct.
Okay. And have who'd you guys vote for in 16 and 20? Thomas, who'd you vote
Trump
for in 16?
Both cases.
Trump in both cases for you. Thomas?
Yes. So in 2016, I went through a right-wing conservative phase in which I voted for Trump. In 2020, I went through a libertarian phase in which I voted for Joe Jorgensen, the libertarian. And in 2020, I'm going through a liberal phase. So what I mean by liberal, I'm really referring to liberalism in its very centrist definition, because liberalism has nothing to do with leftism. So essentially, I'm a centrist, though, you know, classically liberal, neoliberal, sort of that ideology. So I'm writing in Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema.
Okay. So all right. If you were to vote for one of the major party candidates, who would you vote for? Those, if you had to vote for one of the two.
That's tough.
Okay.
I'll tell you this though. I don't want Trump to win, but I do want Kamala to lose, because I do want to see the Democratic Party move rightward. I want to go back to the 90s. I want to go back to the Clinton era. I want to go back to Bill Clinton, Joe Lieberman,
Yeah.
with the exception of free trade. I want to be more protectionist on trade.
Okay.
And
Brian, you said you voted for Trump twice?
I voted Trump emphatically in 2016.
Yeah.
Big Trump train, watched all the rallies, hoped he would go and break DC. And he did to a certain degree. But, you know, as the years went on, loved his policies, loved all he did. But his, you know, the maddest comments that he made around that time, saying he's the world's most overrated general, wasn't cool with me. And I just got tired, you know, every time we would take 3 steps forward with some policy rollout he would do, it felt like he would go and stomp all over the message. And, you know, I think there was a comment I made. Well, you know, I'm not going to say that because it was inappropriate, but he would jump all over some body part of his every time that he would try and make a message. And it just got tiring. And now if someone was to hold a gun to my head, I'd probably vote Trump again because Kamala is just a little too far left for me. But I'm hoping that a libertarian vote or an independent vote can kind of give a finger to both parties and say you guys have both lost the plot.
Thomas.
Yeah, so I have 2 questions, if you're okay with me asking them.
Yeah, I'll just point out, again, I don't want to call you guys haters, but we're just talking about whether there's still a lot of people who don't like either candidate, and you both fall into that category.
Yeah, I can't vote for either. So I gotta ask you, so the first question I'm going to ask you is, if Trump loses, do you see the Democratic Party moving rightward?
No.
Really?
Nope.
Possible, but it would take someone like Bill Clinton with a really thoughtful way and a lot of ability to explain things to say we lost because we were too far left. They'll say, I wrote a piece about this the other day on foxnews.com. They'll say we lost because Biden stayed in the race too long, or we lost because Kamala wasn't good on The View. I think it would take someone of Bill Clinton's thoughtfulness and appreciation for history and ability to convince people to move the party to the center. So it could happen, but I doubt it, with the exception of Governor Shapiro, and I don't think he'll do it. I don't see anybody with even the possibility of overcoming, you know, they don't want to admit that they lost because Trump has appeal or that the party's moved too far to the left. So they'll cling to Biden stayed in too long, Harris wasn't good on The View. Second
You're never
question.
going to get, I mean, they actually, I have to say this, they actually have to have a primary next time. And there's no way that a primary is, thanks. And a primary is not going to yield anybody that's not more to left of center.
Bill Clinton did it in 92, but it takes a special person.
It's a very different, look.
Well, and don't underestimate if Trump wins, what are our politics like, let's say 2.5 years from now? Have the Democrats lost their mind with outrage over ABCD through XX? Or is the party, like, has there been somebody will come out in the middle? Just, we'll see what their appeal is. And also don't forget, you tend to go in the opposite direction because Trump will basically have been a 2-term, almost 3-term president in that he's dominated the national conversation for 14 years. What will the country want? If there is an appetite for, you know, kinder, gentler, as George H.W. Bush said, there may be an opening. On the other hand, the Democratic Party may have pitchforks. We want our Trump.
Thomas, I'm going to ask you to save your other question for next time, just because we're running up against the clock here. I apologize.
Okay.
Thank you for participating. Brian, do you want to ask a question?
I do have one. Well, I have one about the broken primary process in this country, but I think I'm going to stick with the Nikki Haley lane since that seems to be the discussion. Dan was talking last week with a voter, an independent, I think she was, but she voted for Bernie in 2016. And he talked about how there's going to be kind of a reckoning in the party between the Bernie people who feel left behind and the more moderate centrist lane. And I'm wondering if whether Trump loses or wins, and this question is for Sean, what the likelihood of a Nikki Haley style Republican. She's very similar to Trump as far as policy goes, but obviously much different style. And I saw how she was treated in the primary by MAGA, you know, neocon and rhino and all these other things. What is the appetite in the Republican Party for a figure like Nikki Haley in 2028 or 2032, depending on whether Trump wins or loses? Is it a pipe dream that will ever happen?
So the point that Dan made a moment ago is actually really smart because
it happens.
It happens. We do a realignment. You
I
think
use it like one a week. That's it.
Yeah.
So like if we think about going back to 2000, I remember we were like, I don't care who you are, we're all anointing George W. Bush because he can win, and we want to win so bad that this guy's it, and we're all aligning with him. And that, I mean, I'm being facetious, but that was generally the thought. So there is an element of, but we'd been in the wilderness for a little bit longer. I just knowing where the party is right now, and the big influencers and the difference that has happened is that the media landscape has shifted. Shows like this, the people on the right who now don't need cable news to get out there, the Charlie Kirk, Steve Bannon, Dave Rubin, Patrick Bet-David, blah, 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 blah. They're not going to go with the Nikki Haley. It's just not going to happen. And therefore, going into a primary where you're going to have a lot of these folks, really the active part of the base, I don't see at least next cycle. And I would never say never, but I would just say that to me, it would be a very hard turn, because what Trump has done is given the MAGA base this idea of that we can fight and we can win. Right. And I think people want to see that. And with all due respect to Governor Haley, I think that they don't look at this as a profile in courage right now.
Brian, I'm sorry, Brian, I'm sorry to cut you off. I apologize, but we got stuff we got to get to. Thank you.
All good.
Appreciate it. Come back regularly, please. All right. Let me run through some stuff. Tonight, 6 o'clock Eastern time, I'll be here. Two-way tonight. Amongst the people who will join us is Eli Lake, the great writer and podcaster, and other people will join too. We're still lining folks up, so we'll see you at 6 o'clock. We'll be back tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time for the morning meeting. Tomorrow night, election night, 6 Eastern time, special edition of Two-Way Tonight. Dan and Sean will be with me in the evening. They'll hopefully have both napped, bought some Twizzlers and peanut M&Ms and whatever caffeine they want. We'll be on with you from 6 to 7. Then we're going to be on with you throughout the evening, but not continuously. You'll get notifications of when we're coming on. We're basically going to come on when we have stuff to talk about. So you can spend as much of the evening with us as you want. How late we go and how often we're on will just depend on the circumstances. But please save a screen for us, because we think our coverage, like all of Two-Way, is going to be different than what's on offer in other places. So we look forward to spending that with you. And then whatever the state of affairs is in terms of what we know, we'll be back Wednesday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time for the morning meeting. This program will continue. People started to ask us. Yes, this program will continue after the election. So you can rest assured to keep your calendar reminder of 9 a.m. Eastern time for the morning meeting, even after the election. Finally, the farm. Is Mr. Lee here? Is he here? Somebody see if he's here. Well, I'll tell you while we wait to see if he's here. Incredible weekend. Mark. He's not. All right. Incredible weekend. People from all over the country convening on Zooms. People with expertise in design, in website building, in how to form a nonprofit, in fundraising, writing grants. It was an incredible experience, and everybody, a bunch of strangers convening and getting it up and running. We're going to put the website up. For those of you who don't know, Brian is a member of our community. He made his living on the sea, and because of multiple sclerosis, he's unable to continue to do what he was doing. So he and his family are starting Chapin Road Farm, which will be a farm that people can work at who have MS, who need to transition to a different type of career, as Brian is doing. Website's up. You can follow him on Instagram if you haven't. He's got about 1,700 Instagram followers, but here you can see the website. Scroll through it here. Some great pictures of the community and of the farm, little mission statement, a quote from some random guy from Two-Way about how great this is. And now what we're asking you to do, because people have asked how they can help, go to the bottom of the website and sign up, enter your email address and your name. And if you've got something you want to be able to do now or in the future to help the farm, please fill that out. And we'd love to get the email list up to, 2,000 or 3,000 by the end of the week. So please go to the website, which the URL is, somebody will hop on, Paul or Audra. What's the URL of the website? It's
here I go.
Chapin Road Farm. You can actually put in, they bought everything. You can put in org or com or a bunch of stuff, but chapinroadfarm.com. And please, everybody on here, within, as we say, the sound of my voice, please go to the website, enter your information to be part of the community that we're building there to help get the farm up and running. And it's going to be very exciting over the next few months as they get in a position to start raising money and getting grants and and having folks come and work there. So we're all super excited about that. Sean, what are you doing between now and 6 p.m. tomorrow to prepare for election night?
I'm gonna get a facial and then a hot yoga, the full treatment. I am going to start obsessing about data and looking into these numbers. I mean, I'm excited. This is sort of like the fun season. So I'm going to be just obsessively checking X and random websites.
All right. There's Brian. Brian, before Dan tells us about his plans, just update everybody. I don't know if you could hear my update, but just tell everybody where things stand.
Mark, like you were there on Saturday, so where would you like me to start? Because it would take a lot. Like I could go over all the teams,
Well,
and
you don't even, no, just tell.
What
just
would you like me to?
Just take a minute and tell people where things stand.
Okay.
Just sort of what's happening next.
So right after the I think it was Friday, where we asked like people that could help, to email me, and they did, like in a way that is hard to comprehend. A couple people had already reached out before that. One of them was Tom, who I think's on the call, who's like the lead of the development and website design side. Or he's like my right hand man. He's like the cool. I'm gonna go live on Twitch later. The farm like has all the social medias, and they're all. So I'll be live at the farm later this afternoon. Anyone can come on and ask me anything, and I could tell some sea story. I was talking to one of my dory mates from New Bedford that I fished with for a long time. We were laughing about all this, and he said these people haven't even heard any of your sea stories yet.
So one thing, and I want to let Tom and Jim just talk briefly because they're both involved and a huge part of this.
There's a lot of members of the team, I think, on.
Yeah. If there's other people on and you want to come in,
a
raise
lot
your
of
hand.
them. The development guys were up all night getting the website launched. Like they did a hackathon all night. Like I was there for I jump on all the meetings. But that one I was getting ready to go to bed, but I was there enough to, make our plan. And we've got a crew of developers. Everybody's like a tier 1 operator of like philanthropic stuff, which is like the way I've been thinking about this. But it would take me an hour to catch up on the last couple. It's incredible what happened.
You'll be back. Brian, just one more thing about Brian. Brian is not super keen on typing long responses because of his hands.
So that's why we made the Twitch.
Yeah. So if you send Brian, everyone should be sort of limited in emailing Brian and expecting responses. Just sign up on the website and other people will help you figure out how to respond.
And everybody that on the team and stuff that has my cell phone number, just calling me is the easiest way for me to get information. But the cool thing is the Notion, the like fancy Silicon Valley thing we use for our team headquarters, the like AI speak to text on that is like better than any one I've used. So that's been helpful.
So again, fill out the form on the website if you have the ability to help and offer stuff up. Recognize that there have been so many generous people already that we may not need you.
Incredible.
Brian may not need you right away. And again, don't be sad if you don't get a typed response from Brian, because typing is not the best thing.
It speaks to like the team we built. There's a couple weird little specific things that I still need. Like if there's a stonemason around, one of my projects I was going to do next week is build a big, a smoker out of field stones. We have all the field stones, but like online, there's stuff about building them out of cinder blocks and stuff like that. I haven't been able to like find an old guy yet on YouTube that's like making a smoker out of field stones. The other one, if there's a marine biologist out there, like I have a lot of like mermaid treasure I collected from my like years at sea. One thing in particular is really important to me, but I need to get like a special, I need it to be okayed by someone involved in NOAA or,
Okay. We'll find those two. We'll find those two. Stand by, Brian. Yeah, stand by. Jim, tell folks how you're involved and what you're doing, and thank you for being involved.
You bet. Thank you for putting out the call to action. Love the platform. And then you mentioned Brian. I got to meet him through two-way. I'm basically just helping coordinate. Awesome team has been put together. And so it's a lot of fun to just be involved in a cool project like this. And I'm just doing what I can to help coordinate, but we're going to be mentioning some things that we need for the project. And if you sign up on the website, you'll get invited to the Zoom meeting. We're doing Zoom meetings on a regular basis. So thanks again, Mark.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Again, if you want to be involved in the Zoom, when you go in the comments there, when you put in your information, just say you'd love to be invited to the Zooms. Tom, thank you. Tell folks how you're involved, please.
Yeah, thanks. Similar way as Jim, just has been on two-way for quite some time and heard about the opportunity of the project, thought it's really interesting, and I have some web skills, have some time to contribute. So, I mean, figured why not? And now the website's up. So as far as I'm concerned, you know, the mission's complete. I'm sure there'll be updates for the website. I'm sure there are more opportunities to contribute, but I mean, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, we should all be helping each other do these things if we have the skills to contribute. So I mean, Jim, you should give yourself more credit because he really laid out the whole website and got everything perfect for me, where I just essentially just did some, you know, leverage the fact that I'm on the West Coast to kind of work while you guys are all asleep and just kind of tighten things up. But I mean, it was awesome to see a lot of people come together and just, you know, work for, it was just like 2 or 3 days. And we got we got a lot of the website stuff up.
Yeah.
And you know, who knows what's coming up next, but I'm always willing to continue to help out. So
thank you both. You know, it was hilarious on the call when, you know, a group of people who've never worked together, people have different styles, different expectations about how a meeting gets run, but it all just worked. And then all of a sudden somebody popped up some draft logos for the farm.
Yeah,
graphic design. Graphic design. That was kind of awesome. So
that Mark, that's one other thing we talked about. If there's anybody out there in the whole two-way community that wants to like make a logo for the farm, like they can submit that. And then I was thinking we could all like vote on one, you know, like as a community.
Absolutely. I love that idea. All right. So again, we'll keep updating you. Brian will come back. Jim and Tom, thank you. You guys come back whenever you want. And like I said, the goal now as they move towards grant writing and establishing the nonprofit, the goal now is let's just get a really robust email list there. So Brian has the capacity and his family have the capacity to reach folks with updates and with new requests like marine biologists and stonemasons. That's a new one for me. Thank you 3 guys for joining. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a great day. So again, I'll be back at 6 tonight. The 3 of us will be back tomorrow at this time on election day. We hope everybody has a great day. And tonight we'll have updates on early voting, particularly those Pennsylvania numbers, as well as we'll look a little bit at what the candidates have done during the day because they both got a lot of events. Yes, Sean. Oh, we need to hear what Dan's doing.
Dan.
Yeah, Dan, what are you doing the next 27 hours or whatever it is?
I'm like Sean. I mean, this is like Christmas Day tomorrow. I mean, I just love calling around. You know, what are people hearing? I'm like a lot of you. I just want to consume it. And I love election day because you get to see what's actually happening. You know, the voters speak. It's awesome. So I'm super excited. I'm still on adrenaline, and that's going to continue probably to like Friday.
All right, everybody, as you hang up, go sign up on the website, please. So the farm has a robust list. And we'll see you tonight at 6 and tomorrow at 9. Have a great day, everybody.